Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Development Control and Regulatory Board this day, the 14th of March 2019. Might I remind everyone present that the meeting will be broadcast live via the County Council website and will also be available for viewing on the County Council's website after the meeting. Please turn your microphones on when you are speaking and off when you have finished speaking. We go to the agenda, other than we have a couple of substitutions this afternoon. Mrs. Fryer is acting as substitute for Mr. Bentley and Mrs. Seaton is acting as a substitute for Mr. Jennings. Turning to the agenda then is item number 1 is minutes of the meeting held, or the last meeting, 14th of February. There are some redrafted minutes which has been circulated, and I'd like to ask Nick, the planning officer, to explain why this has happened, and we'll need to take a vote on the new minutes. Thank you. Nick.
Thank you. Yes, just to bring members' attention to a slight change to the minute for Hugglescote Primary School minutes. So the minutes that were published with the agenda on page 4 of the agenda referred to the additional guard railing that members resolved to include at the last meeting. Now, since that meeting, there's been a review as to what the guard railing is along the road outside the school, and further discussions have taken place with Mr. Wyatt, who proposed the motion, and also the chairman of DCRB. The condition that you've got on your the minutes that you've got on your papers on page 4 didn't accurately reflect the fact that we needed to include some additional guard railing adjacent to one of the entrances, which wasn't clear from the meeting. So what we now have is some additional wording on the sheet that's been circulated, which basically clarifies that additional guard railing will be provided, and will be provided as part of the school travel plan. So there's no change in terms of the resolution. That still will be provided. It's just how the mechanism in terms of how that was dealt with. But we've had a discussion with the applicant, who's the educational authority, and they're happy to have a look at that and see to put in the appropriate guard railing in place. So that's just a slight wording amendment, which is why you've got the additional sheet. Thank you.
Thank you, Nick. If everyone's happy with the alterations made, someone would like to move them. Dan. Seconded by Tony. All in favour? Looks to be unanimous on that. Yeah. Item number 2 is question time. No questions have been received. Item 3, questions on the standing orders. We have none of those either. Number 4, to advise other items the chairman has decided to take. We haven't any of those. 5 is declarations of interest. It is noted that members who are also members of a parish, town, district or liaison committee will have personal interests in those applications which relates to the areas covered by those authorities. Are there any further declarations? Tony Gillard.
Thank you, Chairman. I think I ought to declare a non-pecuniary interest in item 7, but I'll seek Anthony's advice. I'm the chairman of the Whitwick Quarry Liaison Committee, so I'll seek you. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. No others then? No. Okay. Item 6 is presentation of petitions. No petitions have been received. Item 7 then is the first item on the agenda, which is the application for the Midland Quarry Products Limited, and it starts on page 7, and I'll hand it over to Nick now to present the application. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. So item 7 is an application to vary condition 51 of a 2011 planning permission in order to allow the removal of some vegetation and trees to improve an existing access to the quarry. if you look at page 9 of your agenda, you'll see the plan, which shows 3 points of access that serves Whitwick Quarry. Access 1 is an existing access that allows vehicles to enter and leave the site. There is a office block development just to the southeast of access point number 1, which is the offices for the applicant. The quarry itself is actually not in use, not been used for a while, and the intention is that the applicant wishes to reuse and bring back into use the quarry, which has got an extant planning permission, which allows for the winning and working of minerals at the site until February 2042. So this application seeks to improve access point number 3, which, if we could just move the photos. So access point number 3, which is again is shown on an arrow on that particular image, and on the next image there is a photograph. So these are photographs of access number 3. You can see it's substandard, narrow, and it's currently blocked. So the intention of this application is to widen that to allow 2 heavy goods vehicles to enter and leave and pass at that entrance point. In order to facilitate that, the dry stone walling, which you may just be able to make out on the photographs there, will be removed. That would be set back. Vegetation will be removed to enable the necessary the gradients and the visibility displays to be formed. And then it's proposed that additional planting would be provided, and the dry stone wall would be rebuilt, set further back in a position that doesn't interfere with that visibility display. You'll see from the report that no objections are raised by the Highway Authority. They're recommending conditions in particular to secure that adequate visibility display. We've got no objections from any of the other consultees. We've had a letter of objection from a local resident who was concerned about the loss of wildlife, vegetation, and also the noise and dust impacts. And you'll see from the report that the compensatory planting that we're suggesting would compensate for that. We're also suggesting that the noise and dust impacts are already controlled by the existing conditions attached to the extant quarry permission. The report's recommended to approve. We've got in conditions included to secure that the landscaping details and also to control the reinstatement of the dry stone wall. And as I say, we're not recommending conditions in relation to noise, air and dust, as that's already controlled. I'll leave it there. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Nick. I'll come to the throw it open to the meeting. Tony Gillard, it's your ward, Tony. Would you like to speak first?
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I will move this. The entrance we're talking about, as you can see on the screen, is there already, basically, and it's going to be widened. I note the objections on page 15, or the concerns, item 41. Regarding dust, I don't think there'll be an impact on residents with dust, because Ollie Hayes Wood is to the right of that entrance, quite a dense woodland, which is there as a shield. So, Chairman, I have no objections at all with this, and I'm happy to move.
Just to really sum up and concur with my colleague, that really it looks a straightforward application in so much that it has been an access in the past. They need to obviously start this business again, which, if it's meant to be a quarry, we should welcome the use of a quarry again. It's going to obviously bring employment, but the important thing is a proper access is vital. So I'm very happy to second that, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Dan. Anyone else? Mr. Bolter.
Thank you. How high is the wall? And do they need separate plan permission for the wall to reinstate it, being adjacent to a highway? Because it doesn't say it's in the report. It says they're going to rebuild the wall, but it doesn't say that they're going to get plan permission for it at the same time as this. And when is it going to be done? Because dry stone walls usually have some wildlife within them, or shelter for wildlife, and as we just got started into the breeding season for many species, March onwards, it's not the wisest time to do it, is between now and August.
The wall is low level. Unfortunately, you can't see it clearly on that plan, but it's about 0.6 metres. With it being less than a metre, it wouldn't need planning permission in its own right. But a condition is in place. Clearly, we want to make sure that the design and the detail of that wall is appropriate, and therefore we've got controls to make sure we oversee that process, and that would also control any ecological impacts as well. So, in terms of the timing, we'd want to make sure that is right, so there's no interference. There are separate controls anyway in terms of the Wildlife and Countryside Act that would control protection of species, but we also have a control over the works and when they're done as well through that planning condition.
Anyone else? Sean, did you want to speak?
Yeah, happy to support this. I was just a little curious as to why the quarry's opening again after all these years. Price of crushed roadstone doesn't appear to be going up sharply, and the production levels appear to be up a bit but fairly stable. Any reasons for this that we know of?
We can't say for certain. I've tried to ask the question, and unfortunately I've not been able to this morning. My understanding is the extent of growth across the county and the wider area is pressure for bringing the quarry back into use, and that is part of the justification. I've not got categoric assurances in terms of the demand.
If there are no more questions or comments, we'll move to the vote then. Tony proposed and Dan seconded. All in favour of that? That looks to be unanimous then. Thank you very much. Moving on to agenda item number 8 then, is another quarry application at Ellistown. Nick, could you speak to this one, please?
Thank you very much, Chairman. Yes, item 8 is an application for an extension of the period of time for the operation of Ellistown Concrete Works. The permission effectively would allow the permanent use of the entire concrete product site, including the manufacturing and the stocking area on the site. At the moment, that is restricted to the 21st of February 2042, at which point the site would need to be restored. So if this permission is granted, it would allow for the permanent operation, the permanent use of the site for concrete products, manufacturing and stocking, and also it would remove the ability for the council to control the restoration of the site, because the site would be allowed in perpetuity. Now the site itself, we're told, employs 250 people. The applicant is concerned that the restriction on the time period hinders their ability to secure funding and long-term investment on the site, which in itself puts the long-term future of the site at risk, which in turn would put those jobs at risk. The restriction being removed would allow the business to prepare longer term, have a longer term plan for the growth of the business, and would allow investors to be able to have a long term view in terms of the return on their investment. The application doesn't propose anything built. It's not proposed any changes envisaged at all to the nature of the activities on the site. It's purely to remove that restriction. You'll see from the report that we've not received any adverse comments from any of the statutory or non-statutory consultees, and also we've had no objections from neighbouring district councils or local residents. We've made reference in the report to changes to the character of the area, and do you mind just moving to the next slide, Ian? So this image shows you a wider aerial view. And you can see in the wider area we've got quite a bit of development that's either taken place or in the pipeline to take place, including the Amazon warehouse to the north. The site to the east within Hinckley and Bosworth has also got permission for employment development. There are solar panels to the south, and the wider areas has changed or changing quite dramatically from the permissions that have been granted. And I think that weighs in favour of supporting this application, because the continued and permanent use of the site for quarry works is more in keeping than if the site was set within a much more rural landscape setting. The permanent use of the site would remove the ability to extract clay from the area of the site, and you're set out within the report, and that is part of the consideration. However, you'll see, as explained at paragraph 49, there will be limited scope to extract that clay in any event because of the impracticalities of actually taking that clay out of the ground because of the way the site has already been restored over the years. We're proposing to carry forward planning conditions from previous permissions relating to dust and noise, and also to control the hours of use. We're also seeking to make sure that the bridleway, which is along the northern part of the operations, is kept available for public use. And again, that's in line with the earlier permission. And subject to those conditions, we believe that the benefits for the long-term economic prosperity of the area and for the jobs outweigh the negatives of not being able to restore the site, and on that basis we're recommending approval to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Nick. Dan, it's in your ward. Would you like to speak first? Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Once again, Mr. Chairman, nobody's approached me. I know all of the bodies and the people who are involved, from Ellistown, the chairman of the parish council, Ibstock and the district council members, and Stanton and Barden. Nobody, I've had no correspondence, nobody's campaigned, it's just zero. And I think really when we look at this document and see how well constructed it is and what the aims and the values of it, it's quite easy to see why everybody is saying fine. And I support this, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to propose it. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Anyone like to second that? Tony's second. Did you want to speak, Tony? No.
I think Dan said it all.
Okay. Would anyone else? Mr. Crooks?
Thank you, Chairman. Just briefly, I recently had a visit to the brickworks, which is adjacent, and I was amazed at the production and the way it's organised, and this goes hand in hand with it, you know, concrete products with the building trade. So I do note that the lorries are advised to come out a certain route, which obviously helps residents. So, like the gentleman over there, I'm fully in favour of it.
Thank you. If there's no one else is indicating to speak, we'll move to the vote. Dan proposed and Tony seconded. All in favour? Looks to be unanimous again. Unanimous again, Ewan. Okay. Next item is item 9. Urgent items. Well, I haven't any of those. And number 10 is Chairman's announcement. Well, just the usual. Thank you very much for coming, and thank you for your contribution. And I close the meeting. Thank you.